Hello and welcome into episode 258 of the Just Jets podcast. What's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary. I'm going to be hanging out with you, and I want to talk about the New York Jets vision. Both Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey were introduced to the New York Jets media, their fans, and the NFL world earlier this week. And we got some insight in what their plan is going to be. We will talk about all that. We'll answer your voicemails with your reaction to the hiring and everything else going on in New York Jets land. So I love the idea that Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey have. And I liked the Aaron Glenn hire, I would say definitely the most out of the two. But Darren Mougey is growing on me a little bit. And I'm going to stick by my original thought. I don't view him as the face of this New York Jets organization. I do think it is Aaron Glenn, especially with his scouting background. I think that does play a factor in this. But Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn very much so seem like they are on the same page. When Mougey spoke, he spoke first after Woody Johnson, and he talked about how he and AG kind of see things the same way with their plan. Aaron Glenn gets up there. He says this, more of the same. In breakout interviews, Aaron Glenn was asked about Moog, as he calls him, and Darren calls him AG. They already got nicknames for each other. They're in this thing together, and they said that they will go through the roster and evaluate, and they are still in the evaluation phase, as they should be. By the way, it's been a week, maybe not even. When did Mougey get officially hired? I feel like we found out about it on Thursday or Friday of last week, and then over the weekend it became maybe official, or on Monday or whatever. On Monday was a press conference, so it had to be before that. But moral of the story, they are both very new on the job here, and I like how their approach seems to be, we're in an evaluation phase, and that evaluation phase includes Aaron Rodgers. So they made it clear that they have been in communication. Aaron Glenn was the one who spoke about being in communication with Aaron Rodgers, and they have not made a decision yet on what they want to do with him. Now, there's a few factors in play. Number one, does Aaron Rodgers want to play in 2025 or not? Fair. You got to figure that out. And we don't know if they know if Rodgers wants to play or not. Number two, the Jets don't have an offensive coordinator yet, at least as of recording this on Tuesday evening. Right now, Nick Caley and Tanner Engstrand are the two names that have been floated around the most with the New York Jets. Nick Caley interviewed in Tampa Bay. And after that information came out, Tanner Engstrand's name became a little bit more popular with the New York Jets, especially after Detroit hires John Morton to be their OC. So we're still waiting on who the OC is going to be. And then the two of them together have to come up with what their plan is. And Rodgers could or could not be a part of that plan. And thankfully, Woody Johnson stated that he will not be involved in that decision-making process. He's going to allow AG and Moog to do that together. But they're treating Aaron Rodgers, at least it feels like based on their comments, they're treating Rodgers like he's just another guy on the 53-man roster. And that is a really big change from where the last regime was. Joe Douglas, Robert Salah, and even Jeff Ulbrich, when he was promoted to interim GM, they seem like they put Aaron Rodgers on this pedestal. And I get it. Like, Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback. He will be a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Amazing NFL career. Amazing NFL career. But I think part of, not the only, but part of the issue was Rodgers maybe had a little bit too much power in this organization. And they played into Rodgers with some of the personnel, some of the offensive staff, looking at you, Nathaniel Hackett, and some of the play calling. And Rodgers had a lot of say on the play calling and changing plays at the line of scrimmage, which is why I think, unfortunately, the Jets struggled so much with the play clock. It was always running down to just 1 second. They had to burn timeouts often in the first and third quarters to avoid delay of game penalties. They took a lot of delay of game penalties. If Rodgers is coming back, I'm confident that it will be under the umbrella of, you can come and be a part of what we're doing here, but it's not going to be the Aaron Rodgers show again. that eases my tensions about the idea of Aaron Rodgers coming back, because what I didn't want to see was Rodgers come back, not take the pay cut. You have the huge cap hit in 26. You have Rodgers and Devontae, having fun throwing the ball around. Lazard stays, Nathaniel Hackett stays. They're throwing the ball 40 times a game, Breece Hall, and the running game isn't getting utilized a lot, and so on and so forth. But if they're able to reel him in a little bit, let's say, does that change your mind? A little bit. I think that plays a factor in it, and I think it should. Now, I don't think it's a guarantee that Aaron Rodgers does return. We'll see. We're still in the waiting game process there, but at least it feels like the GM and the head coach are on the same page there, and they're in the evaluation process with the quarterback, which is one of the big things and big decisions the New York Jets have to make this offseason. Arguably, their first big decision with the quarterback, and then you get into, do you give an extension to Garrett Wilson? What about Sauce Gardner? What about anyone else in the 2022 draft class? And so on and so forth. And I'm excited to see what this duo can do together. And I get it. There's still people who are upset about the hire. They wanted, someone else, whether it be an offensive guy, someone with more head coaching experience. All valid. I understand where people are coming from on that. I'm going to give Glenn and Mougey a chance just as much as any other organization, or any other duo rather, in this organization got. I think, going back at least since I've been a fan, there's been head coaching hires that I've liked. There's been some ones that I've disliked. I think most notably the Adam Gase hire, I disliked the most out of any. And I'm not saying like I was alone in that, and, no one else disliked the Aaron Glenn hire, the Adam Gase hire. But when you look at, and granted, it goes deeper than just press conferences here, but when you look at how the Adam Gase era started versus how the Aaron Glenn era started, two totally different approaches and two very, very different things. And, Ron Rivera was on with the NFL Network earlier in the week and was talking about the process that the 33rd team went through in trying to find a candidate. And the main thing that I got from Ron Rivera, who did not get this job, but was one of the first people interviewed, was that the New York Jets were putting a major emphasis on culture and leadership. And those are two, I think, major issues that the New York Jets faced with their last regime. And I'm hoping, because there's no guarantee, but Aaron Glenn is saying the right things right now. And I am hoping that with his personality, he will be able to build a proper culture in here. As I've stated, I think Glenn is the face of this, so I keep referencing him more so than Darren Mougey, and I think Mougey's scouting background and a talent evaluation will come into play, but I think Aaron Glenn's going to have a lot of say in things that they do, and I'm excited for it, because I don't know how many other candidates really know what it's like to be a New York Jet. He came in here as someone who was a player in the organization. He started his coaching career, if you want to call it that, as a scout with the New York Jets back in 2012. And he was up there on the podium talking about the 98 AFC Championship game and how he's still not over that and he has unfinished business. And then he goes in the media scrum and he's putting Rich Cimini in a body bag because he won't stop asking him about Aaron Rodgers. And I don't, like, for all the comparisons that, people point to with Robert Salah and going, well, this is just another defensive coordinator hire, and, Robert Salah was supposed to be a culture guy too, and this is just going to be the same thing over again. This is Salah 2.0. It's only one press conference, I get that, but I have never, in the 3+ almost 4 years that Robert Salah was here, I never saw him speak with that much confidence and authority to the media. And that is a massive culture change. The Jets almost played into it. Robert Salah, unfortunately, because I don't think he did a very good job speaking with the media, created even more problems for this Jets team and for the organization, whether it be, how he phrased things or, misdiagnosing players' injuries was also another big one. But I don't think you're going to get that with Aaron Glenn. And once again, I'm going to keep reiterating, I think him being here and knowing what it's like prepped him for this And that's going to be part of the vision. They get the right people in here, and that's what's going to change the culture. I don't know how many wins the Jets are going to have in 2025. I think there's a chance that they improve, and a pretty good chance that they improve off their 5-win record. But I don't know. Like, I'm not going to say this is a playoff team in year one with this duo. That might be. It stinks because they're in a long playoff drought, but that might be too lofty, and we have way, too many things to, cross that bridge. We don't know what free agency and the draft is going to look like and how this roster is going to look going into the offseason and other changes around the league. But I think you can be excited about the start here to this regime. And I think from what they've shared, the little that they have shared on their vision, I'm excited for what this duo could potentially do. So with that, let's get into your voicemails now. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? We'll start with Jake from Jersey, who wants to share his thoughts after Aaron Glenn got hired.
Hey, what's up, Matt? This is right after we just hired Aaron Glenn. I'm pretty pumped. I mean, like you said in your video earlier, there's pros and cons, but I'm a lot more optimistic with Glenn for sure. Just want to say, Rich Cimini, he called this from the very beginning. Like, he has been saying Aaron Glenn for a while. I know that he has talked to him in the past about it or something like that, but credit where credit's due. But yeah, man, I'm excited to see who he puts together for his offensive staff and who his DC is going to be. Hopefully it's Wilkes. That'd be cool. That'd give him, a lot of, I feel like some weight off his shoulders defensively, and then have Glenn's full, focus as a head coach. I feel like Salah was too involved in the defense at times. He wasn't a full head coach. And hopefully Glenn gets to be that full head coach, I'm also curious to see if they bring Rodgers back. All season I've been up and down on Rodgers. I don't know what I want, but I could see them bringing him back. And if they get the defense back up, to a solid unit, I feel like they would be in good shape, especially with a good OC. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on that, man, and go Jets.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next step to see who he ends up getting for the rest of this staff. Steve Wilkes hasn't been officially announced, but that feels like the one that's most likely to happen, and I love that as he has the head coaching experience, albeit, it was 1 year in Arizona, and he was kind of scapegoated there. He was used for the year. They go to Cliff Kingsbury. They draft a new quarterback. He was stuck with Josh Rosen for 1 year, and they move on from both Wilkes and Josh Rosen. He was an interim head coach a couple of years ago, went 6-6 as an interim head coach in Carolina, had a really good 2023 season as the defensive coordinator in San Fran. Again, was probably unfairly scapegoated after the Super Bowl that year. And now I think you can look at, his body of work, especially as a defensive coordinator, and go, yeah, I have no doubt that this guy can run a defense. And for someone who's at least been in the chair before, knows what it's like to have to get up there every week and talk to the media or game plan and then answer to everything after the game, I think that'll be good for Glenn to lean on. Offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand really excites me. Nick Caley, I think, would be an interesting hire as well. There's been rumblings about Todd Haley being added to this staff in some sort of capacity. I love that idea. Another veteran who has head coaching experience, has been a successful offensive coordinator in this league for a long time. Maybe it's just in some sort of advisory role. Mike Westhoff is supposed to be in some advisory role for special teams. That's exciting. So I have confidence that he could put together a much better staff than the Jets did the last time around with Robert Salah. Let's go to Jerome out in Savannah, who has some rare positivity to share. Jerome's usually pretty down, but Jerry, we're a little positive here. I didn't know this was you.
Matt O'Leary, thank you so much for taking my call. It's Jerome from Savannah. Aaron Glenn is coming home. The prodigal son returns. I'm not sure how you can be negative about this hire.
Hey.
I understand the perspective that this is yet another defensive coordinator that the Jets are hiring as a first-time head coach, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's a good enough reason not to hire the best candidate available. And yes, I wanted Mike Vrabel, but he was. I think we can say with certainty now that Vrabel was a pipe dream. He really didn't want. I don't know. Something about that just strikes me as he did not want to be the Jets head coach, and he really wanted to follow in Bill Belichick's footsteps. But in any event, there's no reason for negativity. I think the Vrabel-Glenn subplot is going to be something wonderful that adds to even more interest and excitement league-wide, and particularly among Jets and Patriots fans, to this rivalry. Both teams aren't particularly great right now, but I think in the coming years we're going to see this really turn into something pretty fierce, and I think I don't know how you can not look forward to that. Glenn, I mean, his last dealing with the Jets prior to being a scout for a very brief time was being left unprotected in the expansion draft when the Houston Texans were founded, and most recent iteration of the Houston Texans were founded, and that he comes back at such a time when the expectations are, to say they're low, I mean, I could flip a piece of paper between the floor and my expectations of the team next season. So he's coming back at a very good time where basically there's only one way to go but up. If the quarterback room can be sorted out, Jets get some good news on the injury front, particularly Jermaine Johnson. And I think, I think there is some reason for optimism. I know I don't sound like myself, but I do. Particularly Glenn's potential impact on Sauce Gardner can be understated. Sometimes you just need to have that older brother, kind of influence in order to reach your true potential. Salah was not going to be that way. He was a corporate yes man. Salah was somebody you hired to stand in front of a podium, and he couldn't even do that right. So I think that
he cut off at the end, but that was way too much. Even Google Voice was like, that's way too much positivity from Jerome. We're not sure if that's actually him on the line. I like the call, but you bring up a good point with Glenn, and he is significantly, there's a night and day difference just comparing the two with Robert Salah and Aaron Glenn. And we have no idea if Glenn's going to work out or not. I'm optimistic about Aaron Glenn, but we have no idea. In 2 years, the Jets could be looking for a new head coach. I hope that's not the case. But something that's very, very different between Glenn and Salah, and I don't want to keep beating on Salah, is the intensity level when he speaks is significantly different. And Salah, was a player's coach. Guys liked him because he was very buddy-buddy with them. I don't think you're going to get that with Aaron Glenn. I think the Jets really need that in this new version of themselves. They need someone who could say to Woody Johnson, hey, like this, we're not going to do shit like this anymore. And I did it in a video yesterday reacting to Monday's comments, but going just based off, spoken word, we have to see it actually put into play here now, obviously. But Woody Johnson was saying the right things, that he's not going to be involved in the Aaron Rodgers decision, that he hired these two guys and is going to let them, do their job. And he said that I got to look in the mirror and be a better owner. So some self-reflection from Ambassador Woodrow Johnson. All right. I'll take it. It's the Aaron Glenn effect. Get ready. AG is here, baby. Let's go to Neil in Jersey City. He wants to get on the line about Aaron Glenn too.
Hey, what's up, Matt? This is Neil from Jersey City. Hope all is well. Haven't called in a while just because, frankly, I was just so fed up with the Jets towards the end of the season that just lost a lot of interest. But here I am, talking about the Aaron Glenn hiring, which I think is exciting. I personally really like the move, and I kind of not really have a bold prediction because I think I'm more pessimistic about the Jets, given what we've seen the last 14 years, of course. But, he comes from the Dan Campbell coaching tree, and, you look at what Dan Campbell's done, obviously a phenomenal job in Detroit, but that franchise, that Lions franchise, has been probably worse than the Jets over the last 50 years.
One of the few.
And now they're like a powerhouse. I know that obviously they lost in the playoffs here, but, that Dan Campbell was a guy who was in the Lions organization, cared deeply about the Lions, right, because he played for them. And look what he did. Now, that's not to say that's a guarantee that Glenn's going to do the same thing. Obviously, we could only hope he would. But I just like the fact that they're taking a guy who was a good player for the Jets, and now he's bringing that energy. I think also, you mentioned on one of your podcasts, he's got that kind of attitude about him where he's almost like a disciplinarian of a sort, which Salah definitely wasn't. And I think they need some leadership. They need a guy who's got some authority, who's not just going to bow down to a guy like Aaron Rodgers and let him do whatever he wants, or anyone else for that matter. Accountability has been a huge thing that we've been lacking. So I think Glenn brings that to the table, and I'm really excited. Curious to your thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm pumped up about it. And not just Dan Campbell, but two other guys that he referenced a ton in his opening statement was Sean Payton, who I think had a big influence on Darren Mougey coming here, but also Bill Parcells. One of the first guys he mentioned, he called Bill Parcells when he wanted to get back into coaching, and Parcells was like, all right, you're going to scout first. That's how you're going to become a head coach and a great coach. And he eventually did it. 13 years later, after getting back into the game, is now a head coach. So I like that he's paid his dues. He knows different avenues in being a scout, then quality control and assistant D-backs coach, and then a DB coach, and then a defensive coordinator. It's really hard not to be excited about him. And I believe it was Jerome who said that Vrabel was his number one choice. He was my number one choice, and a lot of Jet fans' number one choice. But after that, I think the next best two guys were Brian Flores and Aaron Glenn, and they end up landing on Aaron Glenn, and it's easy to see why they liked him so much. And I really hope it works because he's extremely likable and easy to root for. Let's go to Andrew in Virginia. He wants to get into some DJ Reed conversation.
Hey, it's Andrew from Virginia. I just wanted to call and ask a question about DJ Reed. What are we thinking for next year? Do you think he's going to be back on the team? We saw what he put on Twitter about our new head coach hire. And if he's not, where do we go next year? Because we need another cornerback. So what are we thinking? But again, it's Andrew from Virginia. Just wanted to say, love the show, and thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the call, Andrew. I like DJ Reed a lot. I really do. Unfortunately, with the salary cap, I think he's going to be very, very hard to keep. I think someone on the open market in free agency will pay him number one corner money. That's $16, $17, $18 million a year. He's a good player, and he's earned that opportunity. Maybe he goes to San Francisco with Robert Salah. I could totally see that. Maybe he goes with Ulbrich to Atlanta, although they need more linebacker help, I would say. I would look for Jamie Sherwood maybe going back with Ulbrich to Atlanta, but I would say likely not. And you're probably looking at bringing back Brandon Echols relatively cheap. And you have young guys on the roster like Qantas Stiggers, Jarek Bernard-Converse, and maybe another draft pick at some point that you throw into the mix to earn and fight for an outside corner starting job. It's not pretty, but I think it's going to be what's the most likely scenario for the New York Jets at cornerback too. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed was a great duo. Was excited to have them as my cornerback duo for 3 years. They paid Michael Carter, and then it became obvious that DJ Reed would not get an extension, and they're going to have to pivot now. So that's going to be interesting to see who Aaron Glenn and company decide on. Michael in New Jersey wants to talk Garrett Wilson and if he's better than another player in the league.
Hey, this is Michael from New Jersey. I'm calling here with a question about George Pickens versus Garrett Wilson. I'm a diehard Steelers fan, and a lot of us think that George Pickens is way better than Garrett Wilson, especially with a worse quarterback. What do you think about that? And do you think Garrett Wilson will stick with the Jets this season? Thanks.
I think Garrett Wilson will be a Jet. I think he gets a 4-year, $120 million contract extension, somewhere in that range. And I can't think of one thing that George Pickens does better than Garrett Wilson. Maybe contested catches. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt on the contested catches. That's fine. I'll give you that one on Pickens, but both quarterback situations have been mostly bad. Yeah, Pickett and Rudolph were really rough quarterbacks to deal with in his first couple years in the league, no doubt. Russell Wilson is not nearly that good, but a 41-year-old Darren Rodgers and Russell Wilson are not that far off from the kind of players that they are at the tail end of their career. And then you look at the Jets, he had, before Aaron Rodgers this past year, Mike White, Trevor Siemian, Joe Flacco, Tim Boyle, Zach Wilson throwing him the football. So it's not like, Garrett Wilson's been, out there playing with a top offense in the league. Wilson has Pickens in receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns. Wilson's better yards after the catch. He's better drop percentage, meaning he doesn't drop nearly as many passes as George Pickens does. He's better at creating separation. I don't, other than jump balls, I think Garrett Wilson's got him beat in just about everything else. Let's go to an unnamed call from Long Island.
Who's the Jets going to get in the draft with the 7th spot? And who's going to be our offensive coordinator this year? And is Rodgers going to stay or is he going to leave? I prefer if he's going to leave.
Okay. So if he does leave, which, I think it's still up in the air, but if he leaves, you're probably looking at Tyrod Taylor and another veteran quarterback in here, whether, it's Jameis Winston or someone else in that tier. I don't think it's going to be Justin Fields. I think the Jets will end up getting priced out on what Justin Fields is going to get in free agency. I'm going to say it's a 50-50 coin flip if Aaron Rodgers is back right now, which is higher than where I was a few weeks ago. I thought it was for sure that he was going to be gone. Offensive coordinator prediction will be Tanner Engstrand. And where the Jets could go in the draft is a few different directions, I would say. The positions or the players that I look at the most, Mason Graham, interior defensive lineman from Michigan. If Abdul Carter, for whatever reason, fell to the Jets at 7, I think they'd run up to the podium to grab him, but I don't think he makes it that far. Depending on what happens with Devontae Adams, if Rodgers leaves and Devontae Adams leaves, maybe Tet McMillan, the wide receiver, comes into play. And I don't think you could rule out Tyler Warren also, the tight end from Penn State. I really like Tyler Warren. He's an interesting prospect. And Jets have a lot of different avenues they can go in the draft. If you're asking me now to make my prediction, I'll say it ends up being Mason Graham, but I don't think it's as obvious as in years gone by where the Jets are going in and like, oh, it's definitely going to be an offensive lineman or it's definitely going to be a this or a that. There's, I think there's like 4 different positions that they could go in the, in their first round. Let's go to Vic up next from Florida. He's excited.
Yo, Matt, Vic from Florida. I hope you just heard that click. Woo! It's my seatbelt buckle for AG, baby. Let's go. I'm back. They brought me right back, Matt. I'm sure you're just as pumped as I am. Man, our GM and head coach seem like they're on the same page. AG bringing up that horrible AFC Championship loss back in '98 to Denver. I think I was like 8 years old at the time. I remember. I look over. I'm watching the interview right this afternoon. I look over at my wife. She's watching it with me. We actually just had our daughter born this past Sunday.
Oh, congratulations!
So I'm off work for a while. Praise God, she's healthy. Everything's great. She's a Jet fan, of course.
Nice.
And I look over. He brings up that game against the Broncos. I go 10-0, and then sure enough, he said he's never going to let that happen again. I am so jacked up for AG, man. One difference I noticed with him and Salah off the Brit, obviously AG is an all-pro, right? First-round draft pick. That goes without being said. But he's not a pretender, right? We talk about separating the pretenders from the contenders. Salah was a pretender, bro, right? All his stuff I just heard it in his voice from the press conference, right? It was all an act. This is real, man. All right, regardless of what people want to say about AG's resume and, whatever happened in the NFC Championship game, this is real. This is where he wants to be. This is what we deserve. I think they're going to iron things out with Aaron. I really do. I think he's going to come back. I think Devontae is going to come back. I think we're going to put everything together, get this culture straight. Man, I know you're a Mason Graham guy like we talked about in previous phone calls, but, man, I wouldn't be surprised if we take Tyler Warren.
I like it.
And then maybe throw Dart, literally to get a Jackson Dart in the second round. I don't know, man. Again, I want to start building up Jordan Travis. I'm just so pumped up, man. Sustainable success. I really hope we do it. If not, again, we could always come back to being the off-season champions for the 25th year in a row.
I hope that's not the case.
Speaking of T-shirts, hey, quick hack, Jet fans. Hard to find an Aaron Glenn jersey, right? If you have a stitched-on Antonio Cromartie jersey, which my father-in-law does, he's giving it to me. I'm taking that to a seamstress, right?
That's
taking
smart.
Cromartie off the bag and getting Glenn sewed on it, baby. Let's go. J-E-T-S, Jets. We're back. Wait till this year.
I really love the optimism there because for way too long on this show, it's been so skewed negative since what, like the end of September of this year. So for months. And look, I get it. We're everyone's allowed to be excited. I am excited too. I'm very excited about this hire. It's hard not to be. But now's the time they got to show it on the football field. And it might not come in year one, but they talked about building sustained success. So show me, take a step in the right direction in year one. I'm not saying it's playoffs or bust for Glenn in year one. No, take a tangible step forward, and then you take it from there. And you get better year over year, and you build a good freaking football team. That's the hope. That's the plan. I love the guys that you brought up for the draft, Mason Graham or Tyler Warren. I'd be thrilled with either one of those guys, and for totally different reasons. Interior defensive lineman in Graham, they need someone bad next to Quinnen Williams. Tight end, we have no idea if Tyler Conklin's coming back next year. Unfortunately, Jeremy Ruckert hasn't been working out. They need a tight end badly. There's not just one route that you can go in the draft. And I know this is controversial because, I talk about the Jets every day for a living. And, in the new age world, you got to, plant your flag, have one guy and be like, I'm going to the table for, it's got to be Mason Graham in the draft or nobody else. That's not how I operate. That's not me. That never will be me. There's been times where I've liked players more than others, and I'll let you know if that's the case. In this instance, I think there's, many ways the Jets can go. And I'd be happy with either one of those guys. Vic, I appreciate your optimism, man. And once again, congratulations on having the baby girl. And I'm glad to hear that everything's going well there. Peter from Hudson Valley's up next.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter calling from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley on this Monday evening after watching the introductory press conference for Darren Mougey. Of course, AG, Aaron Glenn, as head coach today. I'm just going to get this out front because I'm a fan of Star Trek. If you've ever watched anything, Mookie, in Ferengi terms, is a unique nickname for Ferengi's mother. So every time I hear his name, I keep thinking of that. Hopefully by the time it comes around in the spring or so, summer, maybe I'll finally get that out of my head. But anyway, after hearing the press conference today, I feel like the Kool-Aid man, and I'm ready to run through a wall for these guys. That line about we are the freaking Jets, we're built for this, S-H-I-T, was great. Oh, man, I love Aaron Glenn as head coach of this team. He's not going to take S-H-I-T from anybody. My question for this week is, now that we know where those guys came from, Denver and Detroit respectively, looking at their list of free agents, and this might be a little early in the process, but do you have any names that we should highlight that obviously those guys want to bring in even before the coaching staff starts to come in to play it? I mean, I'm looking at a couple names that I see here. Some obviously might be out of the Jets' price range, but like with Detroit, maybe Cody Barton, maybe Matt Pearl at tackle, maybe one of these, young defensive backs. Who knows? And then looking at, say, Detroit, I see Allen Robinson could be a nice veteran wide receiver presence in the Jets' wide receiver room. Maybe like someone like Khalil Dorsey or Kendall Vidor at corner to help boost that room. Let's see. Who else was another one here? I know Kevin Zeitler, guard, but he's a little older in the tooth these days. So I just want your thoughts on looking at free agents from those teams that you think might help the Jets out at this point. who they're obviously going to look at. Obviously, they said they're going to evaluate everyone on the roster, and including, of course, Aaron Rodgers, and see where we go from there. If he takes a pay cut, I'd be worth, saying he can come back in 2025. If not, then let's move on and get a bridge quarterback to go with Tyrod, as I've said all. But just let me know your thoughts on that, who you might see coming in from Denver and Detroit. And as always, let's run through a wall. Go Jets.
Thank you, Peter from the beautiful Hudson Valley. I appreciate you checking in. I'll give you two names. Neither are really all that like, oh my God, this is like a home run, but more so depth options. From the Broncos, DJ Jones, interior defensive lineman, has played a lot there the last few years. Good interior guy, could help out against the run. They desperately need someone to put next to Quinnen Williams. And if you want to go same position, but maybe higher upside, Levi, I'm going to butcher the last name, but Onwuzurike, something like that. He was a draft pick from them about 3 years ago. Injuries, kind of slow start to his career, so there's some risk involved there. But he was drafted to be an interior pass rush kind of guy, and they need someone with some juice next to Quinnen. That would really revamp this offensive line. And I know, like, this defensive line, excuse me. And I know the sack numbers aren't really there, but his pressure numbers were pretty good this year. He's relatively healthy, not a ton of playing time. DJ Jones played significantly more. But if you want the bigger upside swing, that's where I'm looking. And I keep an eye on defense. I don't see them adding, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see them adding like a starting caliber offensive lineman in free agency. I could see them either retaining Morgan Moses or trying to find it in the draft at some point. But I would look at interior defensive line and a safety at least in free agency would be my guess. Let's go Tommy from Virginia up next.
Matt, it's Tommy from Virginia. After the presser today, with the uncertainty around Rodgers, whether he stays or goes, what are your thoughts on, going for a quarterback in the first or second round? Whether that be Milroe, Dart, Gabriel, one of those guys, McCord. What would be your ideal scenario, the first or second, and what guy would you want? Thank you.
Yeah. I don't love this quarterback class, to be completely honest with you. Outside of the top two guys, I think there's a massive fall off, and I think you can make the case that even some of the top two guys in this draft could be overdrafted. I guess Jackson Dart of that group, and I think he's going to rise his way up to maybe a second round guy. Milroe, he has incredible athletic traits. I don't want to take that away from him. The accuracy and decision making have a long, long, long way to go, which maybe that's a good thing because he would sit, but I don't know if I would take that swing, man. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is the class for it. So I'm not pounding the table that quarterback has to be in play for the Jets in the first round, or even if in the second. If they love someone, that's a different conversation, obviously. I don't have that strong of a feeling on any of these guys in this specific quarterback class, so I don't think they have to. We'll close out with PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Couple things. First of all, I'm sitting here as an optimistic Jet fan. I'm optimistic in general, but it's always a little hard to be an optimistic Jet fan. But I'm very excited about these hires. Aaron Glenn, I think I spoke about. He was my guy. But this GM hire, Mougey, I think is a very good hire. His resume, listen to him speak, the things that are said about him throughout the league. I think that him teaming with Aaron Glenn, we have a good shot at turning this franchise around. Now, I was very excited years ago about Salah and Douglas, so you never do know. But I really do think these guys, both of them, special talents, and maybe, they can put us back on track. The second thing I want to say is there's been a lot of talk about culture. We need to get the culture turned around. We need to improve the culture. Well, to me, culture is kind of an abstract concept. Joe Douglas hired, drafted a lot of team captains with the thought that, these are solid citizens and leaders and that they could help turn the culture around. That it seemed to work. Brian Costello from the Post, I've heard him say more than once that, culture is overrated. That when a team wins, they have a good culture. When a team is losing, they have a bad culture. I don't know if it's as simple as that. The Jets have been losing for years and have had a bad culture, but I don't know if it's as simple as that. What was interesting was today Aaron Glenn saying that, one of the things he's looking for in coaches is to come in and help turn that culture around. So maybe coaches can turn the culture around. My question to you is culture a big thing? Is it real? Is it important? And if so, do you think that coaches are part of that and they have the ability to actually turn the culture and the franchise around? Anyway, Matt O'Leary, get your thoughts on that, please. And as always, go Jets.
Thank you, PG. I do, excuse me, I do think that coaches can instill a culture. And a good example of that is I think for a while, I'm going to give Salah some credit. I think he did a okay job in that department. This year, something changed. Him and Joe Douglas were very mopey. Actually, maybe not even this year. Go back to the Rodgers injury in 2023. It felt like they were very much so in this woe is me state and passing the blame on everyone else. And I don't know if you're going to get that with Glenn. I think there'll be more accountability from his part. And I think that could be enough to help. Now, again, we have no idea what kind of coach Aaron Glenn's going to be. He hasn't done it yet. Maybe he stinks. I hope not, because, again, he's so easy to root for. But there is a big difference there of how he carries himself and how he speaks. And I do think culture matters. I don't think it's just about wins and losses. Because look at how Detroit started. It took them until, the back half of their second year before they really got going. First year wasn't great. About halfway through that second year, they got hot. They finished 9-8, and then they took off from there the last 2 years. Maybe that's the path for the New York Jets. Guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, or if you're listening on audio form, I appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get the show. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.